I'm Margaret Ann Windsor, and this is second YouTube. So I don't know what was left on, deleted on the one I was just putting up. It was about Himon Miller and the illegal, what is very illegal in torture, psychological torture, all of it, terrorism that you can put a label on that he did to me, plus rape. He raped Peggy Ferguson Lauderdale. I went to work back then when all this is going on, trying to work. I went to work at Pizzitz department store. I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to go into that. Now then, I told about Noe, and he was with my husband at Brown Engineering in about 1962, 63. And when I was handed the diagnosis, and I was horrified. This German, well, she was the wife. Himon Miller was from New York. He was Jew, and she was a German Jew, his wife. Okay, maybe you can put this together. It's hard to go back and tell it and fit it into this time I have on here. Anyway, the shock went on and on and on. And it's horrifying. I hope there's pictures that the world has to see, because this was torture. I was never any of the things. The mess that was done to me was orchestrated by the same people I'm telling about. At the time, I didn't know. How could I? So I'm going to mention Victor Gonzalez. He was a psychiatrist that was in Dallas at Parkland when they took John Kennedy, and he was training in to interning. And later, when I'm in Huntsville, and Himon Miller, it's about 63, 64. I guess, it was right after John Kennedy was shot. John Kennedy helped kidnap me and bring me into this hell. So everybody thinks that's okay. I totally believe, and I'm going to skip to this, what's going on, if it's ever told about me, going on up there in the Jewish church up there in Pittsburgh. If you ever show all the outpouring that people have done for them, calling it hate crimes, calling this man who has been programmed killer and every name in the book, and how people, the outpouring for this church up there, because it's Jewish and all this, and how they've treated me. I hope and pray to God that it's shown all over the world how you Americans have treated me and my sons, and the horror and begging. So now I want to go back to Victor Gonzalez. Okay, he was a psychiatrist, and he was at Parkland in Dallas when John Kennedy was brought in 63. So this had to have been 64, 65. He's in Redstone Arsenal. He's a psychiatrist, child psychiatrist, but he treats Army personnel and all that. So now then, I'm working at the health spa. A new one that they were just coming in, and it was a new one, and I managed the female 3.5 days a week, and so, they weren't together back then. The male was separate days, and it was a nice job. I loved it, and I made pretty good money there. This doctor came in, Victor Gonzalez, and I thought I could hardly understand him. He spoke English, but I could hardly understand him. His wife did not. She was from Honduras, which was British before the Americans took it away. Made us fight against ourselves. So because she can't speak English, he says she's just had a baby, so he wants to go around as I show her the instructions and everything. So he did. And I thought, I can't stand this man. He's a control freak, what he's doing. So he makes a statement to me. They only signed for a 30-day or a 3-month. I can't remember. I know she didn't come back but a couple of times, and he was with her going through the steps as I took her through all the time. He made a statement which was odd to me. He said that did I know a hairstylist that could do her hair like mine? I said no. I didn't like him. Why, ugly little piece of crap. Who on earth, and I'm going to use this word almost, would think I would wipe my on any of these people who are supposed to help people, not misdiagnose them, feed them drugs that are totally, wow. I hope there's a heaven and hell. Anyway, Gonzalez ends up, she's going back to Honduras. She's had the baby. She's going back to Honduras. So he shouldn't be coming back in there. And I went to eat at night. Ate up the street of the deli. It was in Whitesburg Shopping Center there in Huntsville, Cosmopolitan Health Spa. I came out the front door and he's waiting there. And he said, get in the car and go with me. I said, I'm not going with you. And I remember, I don't remember what else I said to him. But I went on up and ate. Now then, I'm going to go to when, leaving all the hell out there, my husband moved to Atlanta, and we followed, and he worked for Lockheed Marietta. And we lived in Marietta, Georgia. Got over there, and my husband took me to Victor Gonzalez in Lenox Square. It was twin buildings there. You get into twin. He took me there and turned me over to Victor Gonzalez, psychiatrist, child psychiatrist. God, please. I'm going to go ahead and put it. It's my understanding this sorry sot killed. Well, they tried to kill me, and they did a pretty good job of it. April Fool's Day of 80 and ongoing. But he killed a 12-year-old. I've already put that up. And an Eastern Airline stewardess that were talking about how he raped them. And believe me, that's rape. So anyway, my husband turned me over to him, and he worked at Parkwood. And now then, you should check it out down there. Parkwood, Parkland, they're all one group. And all this push for better mental health when really they should broach the subject of mind control. Nobody does. Ask yourself why. The media, your psychiatrists, your doctors do not tell about the murders and the misuse of psychiatry. Instead, they're trying to get more mental health rather than the real subject of mind control and a weapon used by your government. So, I can remember Gonzalez. He was on the 16th floor. He shared the office with Dr. Brown at the time, and I remember him saying she married colors. Anyway, he took his shoes off, started taking his shoes off in front of me, and I screamed bloody murder. You could have heard me all over the place. And I understand now that's a form of undressing. So I blatantly screamed. It scared me to death. Anyway, I'm going to go on to this part. The shock and the illegal medicine that was torture that was pushed on me during that period of time, and it was a long time, was so horrific. Out of my life and my children's life. And there's some other things I am not going to say until hopefully this is laid out before the world. And you talk about shocked, taken to Parkwood there in Huntsville. This is Atlanta. And horror. Now then, I'm going to go ahead and go to, this is where Gonzalez was the one that I found him and Kathy when I opened the door to his office. They were on the floor, and she was his mentor from Tulane University. That's where he finished medical school. Daughter, he had sent her well, you would think he would know Victor Gonzalez as a psychopath, and he was diagnosed by Kenneth Reagan, another doctor, psychiatrist there. And he was run out of town. Reagan was. He spelled it Ragan. Don Reagan, Kenneth Don Reagan, and he ended up in I've forgotten, in Florida. He was run out of town because he had papers against Gonzalez. So anyway, my attorney was Eugene Kaiser. And I've mentioned him over and over because of the Gene Srokerman murder. It was connected to the hospital where Congressman Dr. Larry McDonald worked and later went down the plane. And I was flown out to Larry Flint's then. Larry Flint had been shot by a program shooter, and I had been writing about mind control. This is in I guess we moved back to Atlanta in 1967, about the time Martin Luther King was shot. Then you get into Atlanta, what they did to me there, and the shock, and the Parkwood, and the shock, and the doctor. He's a doctor, he's a sadist, he's a rapist, he's a cold-blooded killer. And nobody seems to care. I took letters from the FBI, gave them to the state medical board, and they just grinned at me and laughed. That's who you're supposed to take it to. A couple years later, I went back there to confront them. Why haven't you done something in the shape I'm in? Because it almost killed me April Fool Day of 80. And they grinned and said, well, we lost it, or we don't have it. Oh, I don't know if they said they lost it. They didn't have it. It was just they hadn't grinned at me. So, the so-called medication, so-called diagnosis was a total lie. And it started with the Jew doctor because of who I am, because who my father is, an honest man, and for the Jews that they're blaming me for in the Holocaust. So they're going to make me pay. And the Jews were just as much a part as anything. Now, I wrote the book and about chipping and mind control. I never knew it was connected to the Bible. I'm going to try to quit on this one. My husband was a part of turning me over to this sick person who's still in practice. And back when I got the letter from the FBI, I was going to Cobb County Police. We lived in Cobb County. And I was told that Gonzalez was already under, or maybe the FBI told me that, under investigation. But he's still in practice. So I had Himon Miller as an attorney in about I'm trying to keep the timeline, 75. I sued him. My husband was the one that took me. Well, I liked the attorney, Gene Kaiser, because he's a former Fulton County, Atlanta district attorney. But it was settled out of court, and they made me sign a thing for nothing. I mean, it was really nothing. Sign a thing that I was not supposed to talk about it ever again. Well, I didn't know the condition they had me in. I didn't know that it was all a lie. I didn't remember my name or why this was being horrible crimes and torture orchestrated against me and my sons. And I signed a paper that was illegal for them to ask me to even never talk about what? The horror done to me, the misdiagnosis. Really, it was murder to torture me, and the baking of my brain. How many times they went after my brain. And I can remember my husband helping me, or my husband had come to pick me up. He turned me over to this sick SOB. This man's still in practice, and I can guarantee you he's the one that they came out and almost killed me after I saw him and Kathy on the floor of his office. This was over by Northside Hospital, 1972. And they were told to kill me after they raped me, four of them. This is where Smokey Stover, or I thought it was Smokey, was, and he told them to leave me. He wasn't going to kill me. And about that time, it was dark, and we were at Terrell Mill. I don't know how I got there. I'd driven there after I'd saw them on the floor, and he came out, and he hit me, and I remember Kathy said, "You can't hit her." He shoved me in my car, and that's where I ended up. And it was a dead end in the woods. And what saved me was this car drove up. It wouldn't leave. It got the license plate of these four people. And that's when they left. They took off. And I was able to leave, and I went home, and I remember it was late. It was dark, and Mark said, "Mom, what's happened to you?" Because they'd run me. I'd run from them through the bushes and everything, and I guess it's okay for Elizabeth to be illegal, work for the Illuminati. And because I'm a victim of this hell, then I'm not good enough to have my job. I could go on with the horror. People will come back and call me names. I was given drugs and diagnosed with a non-existing illness simply because of who I am. So later, Mr. Flint, that's what he said to me when I flew out in '83 in the campaign to replace one of the doctors I wrote about, Congressman urologist Larry McDonald. First thing he said to me is, "You don't have to tell me anything about yourself. I know everything there is to know. I know they were going to send you back a vegetable." And this is what they tried to do again, April Fool's Day of '80, with letters from the FBI on me. And remember, Gonzalez was the one that after they had cornered me, I'd seen him and Kathy on the floor, and they tried to kill me, and that was just about a week after this in '72. I was shoved in the car once again and taken to College Park across Atlanta. And that's where it's on the Watergate tapes, 18-and-a-half-minute gap where Henry Kissinger, Secretary of State and Defense at times, in the Oval Office, Nixon, was on the tapes, going to have me lobotomized if the Brits didn't cross his palms and give them what they wanted. I lived to die another day.